There is a specific silence that happens in the bedroom when your body stops doing what it has done effortlessly for your entire adult life. You do not talk about it. She does not talk about it. You just lie there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, trying to convince yourself that you are just tired, that it was a long week, that the stress from work is finally catching up with you. But deep down, you know the truth. The machine is not responding the way it used to. I remember that silence well. I remember the exact morning I woke up in my late 50s and realized that the predictable, automatic morning response I had taken for granted since I was a teenager was simply gone. It did not fade away slowly. It felt like someone just went to the breaker box and flipped the switch. Suddenly, the power was out. And the hardest part about that moment is not the physical failure. It is the immediate, heavy hit to your pride. When you spend 30 years as a sales executive, constantly on the road, closing deals, managing pressure, living out of hotel rooms across the country, you get used to fixing things by applying force or making a quick call. You believe you can muscle your way through any obstacle. I ignored my physical infrastructure for decades because it always seemed to cooperate. So, when my body finally stopped cooperating, my first instinct was not to figure out why the system was failing. My first instinct was to find a shortcut. I wanted a quick fix so I could go back to pretending everything was fine. I made the appointment. I sat in the sterile doctor's office. I answered the uncomfortable questions, avoiding eye contact, staring at the medical charts on the wall. I walked out with a prescription for the little blue pills that promised to make you feel like a younger man again. And for a short time, I thought I had solved the problem. The pill did exactly what it was engineered to do. It forced the system to work. It forced the blood to move. It gave me the mechanical result I was looking for. But nobody tells you about the heavy cost of relying on a chemical jumper cable to start your own engine. The intimacy in my life stopped being natural. It became a scheduled, calculated event. I found myself doing mental math during dinner, calculating when to take the medication, waiting for the exact window of time when it would take effect. It felt clinical. It felt like a transaction. I would get this flush in my face, a dull ache behind my eyes, a tightness in my sinus, and a mild headache that lingered until the next morning. I was forcing a reaction out of a body that was essentially screaming that something was fundamentally wrong with its internal plumbing. It was Alyssa who finally made me stop and look at what I was doing. She is a woman who does not tolerate unspoken tension. She can read a room, and she can read me better than anyone I have ever known. One evening, after weeks of this staged routine, she just looked at me and asked why everything felt so heavy, why I seemed so disconnected and guarded, even when we were together in our most private moments. I realized then that the pill was fixing the mechanics, but it was destroying my confidence. I did not feel like a capable man. I felt like a guy who was faking it, hiding behind a prescription, terrified that if I did not have that little pill in my pocket, I was completely useless. I decided I was done with the temporary patches. I needed to understand what was actually happening under the hood. I started treating my body the way I used to treat a failing sales territory. I stopped looking at the end result and started looking at the supply line. What I learned was that a lot of men are not broken. We are just ignoring the wrong things. We focus on the lack of action, but we completely ignore the lack of circulation. When you cross into your 50s, your body slowly stops producing the gas that keeps your blood vessels wide open and flexible. That gas is nitric oxide. It is the signal that tells your pipes to relax, expand, and let the blood flow through. If you do not have enough of it, your vessels stay tight, constricted, and stubborn. Think of it like a garden hose. If you squeeze the hose, it does not matter how much pressure the water pump is pushing out, the water is not going to flow. The little pills force those pipes open chemically, violently, for a short window of time. But they do not fix the underlying shortage. They do not repair the hose. They do not rebuild your natural supply line. I realized I needed to rebuild my natural ability to produce nitric oxide. I did not need a pharmaceutical drug that gave me a headache. I needed the raw materials that my body was actually starving for. I started talking to other guys, older guys, who seemed to have figured this out without spending their lives waiting in line at a pharmacy. An old client of mine, a guy who ran marathons in the Arizona heat and still had the energy of a man 20 years younger, told me about amino acids. He talked about them not as dietary supplements, but as raw structural fuel for the human engine. At first, I made a mistake. I read that an amino acid called L-arginine was the direct precursor to nitric oxide. So I bought a bottle and started taking heavy doses. I figured more was better, the classic mindset of a guy trying to force a result. But my body completely rejected it. My stomach was constantly in knots. I felt bloated, uncomfortable, and honestly, dealing with severe stomach cramps is the fastest way to kill any physical confidence you are trying to rebuild. I learned the hard way that a large portion of L-arginine gets destroyed in the gut before it ever reaches the bloodstream. To get enough of it to make a measurable difference in your circulation, you have to take so much that it completely wrecks your digestion. I was trading one uncomfortable side effect for another. That is when I found the actual solution. The one habit that changed the entire landscape of my physical health and allowed me to throw those prescription pills in the trash. I switched to a slightly different amino acid called L-citrulline. It sounds like a minor technical detail, but the difference in how my body responded was night and day. L-citrulline bypasses that destructive process in the stomach. It enters the system smoothly, gets absorbed easily, and then your kidneys convert it directly into the L-arginine your body actually needs to create nitric oxide. It is like using a premium, refined aviation fuel that does not clog the engine filters. You can take less of it, it does not upset your stomach in the slightest, and it goes straight to work rebuilding the supply line. I did not just stop there. I learned that combining this clean fuel with a specific kind of plant extract creates a massive multiplier effect. I found an extract that comes from the bark of certain pine trees. It is a natural vasodilator. That means its only job, its only function in the body is to protect and expand the blood vessels. When I combined the L-citrulline to build the nitric oxide and the pine bark extract to open the pathways, the change was profound. I did not notice it overnight. It was not a violent, sudden reaction like the prescription pill. It was a quiet, steady, undeniable reconstruction of my internal infrastructure. It started with the morning response. One day, a few weeks into this new daily habit, I woke up, looked at the ceiling, and realized the switch was back on. The system was firing up on its own, without any chemical prompting, without any rigid planning, without any headaches or flushed skin. It was just my body functioning the way a man's body is supposed to function when the plumbing is clear and the pressure is right. The difference in how I carried myself was immediate. The confidence naturally comes back when the body starts to respond again. You stop worrying about whether or not things are going to work. You stop scheduling your intimate life around a medication window. Alyssa noticed the shift in my posture, in the way I looked at her, in the complete absence of that quiet anxiety that used to follow me into the bedroom. We got our spontaneity back. We got our connection back without the middleman of a pharmacy dictating our timeline. And here's the thing that surprised me the most. The benefits did not just stay in the bedroom. When you fix your circulation, you fix everything. Nitric oxide does not just open the pipes in one specific area. It opens them everywhere. My recovery after a morning workout improved dramatically. The chronic fatigue I used to feel at 3 in the afternoon, the brain fog that made me want to close my office door and put my head on the desk started to vanish. Even my thinking felt sharper and clearer. It made perfect sense once I thought about it. Better pipes mean better blood flow to the muscles, to the heart, and to the brain. I was no longer a machine running on restricted fuel lines. My routine now is simple. I wake up early here in Scottsdale, usually before the sun is completely up over the mountains. The very first thing I do, before I make coffee, before I check a single email or look at my phone, is hydrate and take my L-citrulline paired with the pine bark extract. I do some light resistance work, I walk every single day, I protect my sleep, and I maintain the infrastructure. I am not saying this is a magic trick that turns back the clock 30 years. I am 63 years old. I have to work harder now to maintain what I used to get for free when I was 35. But I'm no longer relying on a synthetic crutch to feel like myself. I am no longer patching a failing system with a temporary fix that leaves me feeling worse the next day. I rebuilt the supply line. If you are over 50 and you are noticing the power going out, do not panic and do not immediately accept that you have to rely on a prescription for the rest of your life. Your body might just be starving for the basic materials it needs to keep the pressure up. Stop ignoring the infrastructure. Start looking at the fuel you are putting in the tank. The solution is often much closer and much quieter than you think.